Hi, my Alicia. How are you? I whisper. You guys ready for a story before Carolyn goes live tonight? Hi, Nicole. Let's see what we got on the agenda tonight, okay? Got my phone holder. Remember the one people make fun of? He was purple. He broke. It's a unicorn or something. No, wait. Zebra, I guess this one is. I don't know. But I found another. I'm sorry. I told Moo like a half hour ago, I'm going to go live and read. Told Davita, and I told Carolyn. Moo's the only one that was excited. Anyway, I got another one. I found it at Walmart. $4.88. I washed my hair before I went to bed last night. So it's a little bit shinier. I go Thursday, get it redone. Now you are Granny. Well, on my Instagram, that's my name. It's been that for years. Actually, on Instagram, which I'm never on there anymore because I can't get into the account I want. I've been locked out of it since 2018, I think. And there's stuff on there that I want that's really precious to me. Yeah, on Instagram, I'm Crazy Granny 8. And I cannot get in there anymore. But I spell it GRANNICRAZI 8. I was that for a lot of years before I came here, Carolyn. I just can't get in it. Really upsets me too. I think I had to make another one and I hate it because it's not really my account. I mean, it is, but you know what I mean? And they tell you on there too, so what? If you can't get into it, that's it. Too bad. They don't care. Mommy Rambling's blocked, so she did show up. I don't see Davita. Hi, Ethel Mertz. You're cleaning. Trying to get this set up where I don't have to look down so far because of my neck. Killing me. Okay, Davita. Whoa. Hi, Sherry. 54321. You're going to be getting in the shower? You have hot water now, I guess, which is a good thing. You have heat and water. Great. That's great. We're going to read some stories, some scary stories. Ooh. Hi, Bezos de Sandia. It was just yesterday, Nicole. It's not the end of the world. Everything is OMG. OMG. Oh, it's not the end of the world. You deal with it. Is that Alicia? Hola, QB. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Hi, LMNW50. Try to get closer. I don't want somebody that Lexi's talking to on the phone to know what I'm doing. Carolyn, you know about that. I said, if that person hears me and asks, just say, I work on the internet. Okay, let's see where we were. I don't want to read that story. I don't want to read that same one, right? Okay, yeah, this was, yeah, I don't want this one. Hold on, guys, I'm sorry. Okay. Here we go. Okay, Besos de Sandia. I hope she enjoys. Hi, little girl. Going to bed. Good night, little girl. Have sweet dreams. Good night, moon. Good night, stars. That's you, isn't it, Alicia? Or your friend, or you're doing, that's you. Oh, the cute little feet. Is that little kid's feet? Good night, brush. Good night, little old lady whispering, hush. Okay, The Girl in White, Chapter 8. He was sulking a little, standing at the sidelines while all the other men danced with their pretty partners. His girlfriend had not come to the dance that night. Her mother was ill, and so his girl had remained at her side. A fine, pious act, he thought sourly, but it left him at loose ends. His friend, Ernesto Carolyn, came up to him between sets with a cold drink and some words of encouragement. After all, Anita, It's not the only girl in the world, Ernesto said. There are many pretty girls here tonight. Dance with one of them. Bolstered by his friend's words, he started looking around the dance hall. His eyes fell upon a beautiful young girl standing wistfully at the edge of the floor beside the door to the terrace. She was dressed in an old-fashioned white gown, and her skin was pale as the moon. Her dark eyes watched the dance hungrily from her position behind a tall fern. Hi, Jeannie's talking right. He felt his heart beat faster. Such a lovely woman should be dancing. He made his way through the bustling crowd and bowed to the girl in white. She looked startled by his addresses, as if she had not noticed anyone, as if she had not expected anyone to notice her that night. But she readily assented to dance with him, and he proudly led her out onto the floor for the next set. All thoughts of Anita gone from his mind. Here's the picture so far, or illustration. Yeah, Ernesto. That's Isaiah's best friend, Alicia. I don't know if I ever showed the picture. I know I've talked about it, where Ernesto's mother tried to make him Mexican like them. I mean, that family, they just love Isaiah. They've been friends since, school. Isaiah came home one night, his hair solid black. He had a little mustache. She dyed his mustache black. And Ernesto had given him a huge golden chain. And then Ernesto always wore like this wallet thing that had like a little chain or something. He's a real cute young guy. And Isaiah said, Ernesto's mom said, we're going to make you Mexican just like us. It is cute though, right? But Isaiah has such white, like a pale coloring to him that the dark black didn't look so hot. It's funny though. Ernesto and some of the other fellows laughed when he danced across the floor with the girl in white in his arms, which made him angry. Then a couple bumped right into them as they whirled in synchronization with the dance. He was furious and wanted to stop the music and make them apologize, but the girl in white only laughed and hushed him. They couldn't see me, she said. No one can. I see you, he said warmly. No one will overlook you again. There's Shorty. She smiled and told him that he didn't understand. He put her remarks down to shyness. When the dance was over, he hurried to get his fair partner a drink. Ernesto approached him at the refreshment table. When I told you to dance, I meant with a partner, his friend teased him. I was dancing with a partner, he replied, irritated by his friend's remark. The loveliest girl in the world. You've had too much to drink, my friend, Ernesto replied. You were dancing all by yourself out there. He glared at Ernesto and turned away without answering him. He made his way back to the girl in white and asked her to stroll with him along the terrace. The night was beautiful, the sky full of stars, and his heart was in his eyes. as he stared at the girl in white, gazing over the beautiful scene. The girl in white turned to him with a sigh and said, "Thank you for the dance. It's been a very long time since I had such pleasure." "Let us dance again then," he said, infatuated. She shook her head. "I must leave now," she said, catching up her skirts with one hand and drifting toward the stairs at the side of the terrace. "Please don't go," he begged, following her. "Hi, Detective Turtlegum." "Hi, One-Eye Blind Arts." "Nelson." "I must," she said, turning to look at him. Her eyes softened when she saw the look on his face. "Come with me," she invited, holding out a pale hand. That's kind of creepy. His heart pounded rapidly at the thought. More than anything in the world, he wanted to go with this lovely girl. And then his subconscious mind in panicked self-defense, pushed a clinical observation through his romantic befuddlement. In a moment of blinding revelation, he realized that he could see the stone wall of the terrace through the girl's outstretched hand. His desire melted away with the shock of his sudden revelation. He had been dancing with a ghost. His eyes snapped back up to the girl's face. At his look of horror and disbelief, the girl gave a sad laugh and dropped her translucent hand. "Goodbye," she said, her body becoming thin and misty. "Goodbye." Then she was gone. He gave a shout of terror, his heart pounding painfully against his ribs, as he realized how close he'd come to taking the ghost's hand and walking into death beside her. Sweat poured off of him as he bolted from the premises, leaving his horse behind, and ran all the way home. He told Ernesto the whole story the next day when his friend came to bring him his horse. Ernesto whistled in awe. "You saw the spirit of Consuelo, my friend," he said. "She was an aristocrat's daughter who lived in this region more than 100 years ago. She died of consumption the night before her first ball, and they say her spirit sometimes attends the local dances, hoping to claim one of the dances that she missed." He shuddered at the thought of his dance with the ghost. "I'll not be visiting that dance hall again," he told Ernesto, "and from now on, the only girl I will dance with is Anita." That's the end of that one. Hi, Ethel. Yes, a horse, Alicia. Seems like when you come in, the story always has mentions a horse, doesn't it? Hi, Elemental. Running away. This one is Lover's Leap. My grandfather sat silently at the far end of the table, listening as my parents raged back and forth across the good china, each blaming the other for my elder sister's elopement. I sat still as a stone as the cutting remarks grew louder, rattling the glasses. How could she have run off with a sailor? Where had they met? How long had this clandestine courtship been going on? I glanced down the table at my tall, elegant grandfather with his lion's mane of white hair and broad, imposing shoulders. Our eyes met for an instant, and I immediately realized that my grandfather knew all about my sister's elopement and that he would never share his knowledge with my parents. I dropped my gaze to my napkin to hide a grin. Wonder what kind of napkin, Carolyn? And anyone listening on a replay, welcome. And I hope you enjoy the stories. Thank you for listening. Please come back again and enjoy these wonderful stories. I'd known about my sister's romance from the start and had kept it hidden. Why should it matter who Elaine married, as long as he was an honorable man who earned a good living and treated her well? A mere decade ago, we Americans wrote a Declaration of Independence that said all men were created equal. If all men were created equal, then I figured it didn't matter if Elaine was a society lady and Charlie was a poor sailor. They should be allowed to marry. But my parents thought otherwise. Father was the younger son of a British aristocrat, and Mama had come from a wealthy Virginia family. Marrying outside one's class was just not done in their worldview. So Elaine had eloped with a sailor. When dinner was finished, my grandfather rose from the table and called, "Take a walk with me, Thomas?" My father waved me away from the table with barely a glance, so I followed my grandfather into the hallway, and the servant brought our coats. Hi, Ren. Wait 1 second, guys. One minute. Can you see anything right now? Nothing? Nothing, I hope. Okay. Um, and so I followed my grandfather into the hallway, and the servant brought our coats. As soon as I saw the full moon outside, my heart hammered with fear. I knew exactly where we were going, for it was the same spot my grandfather visited every month on the night of the full moon. We were walking to Lover's Leap to sit under the tall pine at the edge of the ravine and wait for the ghost. The trees whispered in the night wind, and the shadows lengthened around us as we approached the narrow ravine. Hey, Tracy. No, I had to spit something out, and I don't want to shut my camera off because then I lose the stream. So whenever I need to do something that I don't want you guys seeing, I'll just go like this, okay? Something that I want to keep private because I'm a lady. LaCroix, some kind of black raspberry water, sparkling water. The trees whispered in the night wind, and the shadows lengthened around us as we approached the narrow ravine. I hated this place. I had first heard the ghost scream at the tender age of 6. The haunting began with a sudden, intense silence and a sharp drop in temperature until the surrounding air felt as cold as ice. She's on the phone, Tracy. Next, a loud cracking noise sounded from the top of an old pine tree that hung precariously over the ravine, as if a huge branch had broken in two. The cracking sound was followed by a terrible scream and the heart-stopping noise of a body plummeting into the ravine. The ghostly wail Oh, good, good. Yes, give us the info, Basis. The ghostly wail ended abruptly in a terrible thump as the screaming man hit the sharp rocks at the river's edge. It was followed by a loud splash as his dead body rolled into the river. Then there was silence. It was a horrific death scene that played out every month under the light of the full moon. I never understood why my grandfather came here each month to listen to the tragic death replay itself again and again. He'd even installed a bench under the precarious pine. Here's a picture of Lover's Leap. I almost said lubber. Yes, you can give us the info. Write it in here. Let me know when Carolyn goes live. Oh, wait, never mind. Well, yeah, still let me know. It's like about a little over a half hour before she goes live. As we approached the aforementioned tree, a shock of sheer terror iced through my body. My heart leapt into my mouth when I saw a white figure stir in the shadows under the pine. My hand shook as a second shadow joined the first. Then my sister's voice called my name, and the relief was so intense that sweat poured down my back, my neck and back as I raced to embrace her. Charlie stood next to us, beaming with delight as he shook my grandfather's hands. "Congratulations on your marriage," the old gentleman said, waving them to a seat on the bench. Elaine and Charlie sat holding hands as moonlight streamed over the hills to the east. I sat on the pine needles beside the bench, leaning my head against Elaine's knee and watching moonlight flickering on the babbling water several hundred feet below our perch. "Thank you for helping us," Charlie said to my grandfather. "I would not have had the courage to propose to Elaine if you hadn't given me your approval." "I don't understand why you approve and Mama does not," Elaine added in her soft soprano. "I thought you, of all people, would want me to marry a rich man to bring more money or consequence to our family. Hi, Captain Lee." Grandfather smiled and took a seat beside Charlie. "I have more money than I know what to do with. As for consequence, that's something your mother cares about. I value other things, like family and love." He paused and then reached into his deep coat pocket and removed a long box, which he turned over and over in his hands. Finally, he said, "Perhaps this wedding present and the story that goes with it will help you understand why I have given my consent to your runaway marriage." Sugar daddy, right? Grandfather handed the box to Elaine. I watched curiously as she opened it and drew out a long blue and white checked bandana made of gingham. The homely old scarf was covered with the most intricate embroidery I'd ever seen. Delicate flowers and graceful birds filled every inch. The flowers seemed to shiver in the moonlight as Elaine turned it this way and that, staring in fascination at the artwork stitched upon such an unlikely object. She handed the bandana to Charlie and removed a second item from the box, a slim silver dagger with a lovely design engraved upon the hilt. Charlie passed me the embroidered bandana and took the dagger from Elaine as my grandfather began his story. My younger brother was a sailor like you, Charlie, grandfather began. His name was also Charles, and he was a lieutenant in the Navy. I stared incredulously at grandfather's stern face in the moonlight. I didn't know you had a brother, I exclaimed. Grandfather frowned at me for interrupting. He died young, grandfather said. If I may get back to my story? He cocked an eyebrow at me, and I subsided onto the pine needles as he told the following tale. Lieutenant Charles Madison was a dashing figure, tall and blond and handsome, with a roving eye and a honeyed tongue. The young ladies sighed with longing whenever Charles entered a room. He served as an aide to the admiral, and he sailed on the first Virginian flagship to enter the fabled realm of China. Oh, I wonder if this is some of my relatives. Okay, Captain Lee, smoke one for me too. One evening, the admiral and his officers were invited to dine with a powerful mandarin and his high officials. They dined in a glittering palace filled with treasures and ate the most delicious and exotic food that young Charles had ever tasted. Alicia. As the meal progressed, the handsome lieutenant became aware of rustling sounds and soft female whispers somewhere above his head. Glancing up, he saw a finely wrought ivory screen edging a high balcony. Small silts were cut through the ivory, and Charles thought he caught a glint of light in an eye pressed to a hole in the screen. Seeing his glance, a courtier told the lieutenant that the wives and concubines of the mandarin were secreted behind the ivory screen. And when they watched the strange white men who had come to their palace from a foreign land. After protracted farewells, the naval officers exited the palace via the grand entryway. As Charles passed an elaborately painted screen, a hand reached out suddenly and plucked the blue and white checkered bandana from his neck. Charles turned quickly and saw the edge of a silken robe disappear behind the screen. He shrugged off the theft and followed his fellow officers back to his ship. The next day, a servant came aboard the battleship, carrying a rice paper wrapped package for Charles. When the lieutenant opened it, he found his checkered bandana covered on both sides with delicately embroidered flowers and birds. Charles put the bandana thoughtfully away in his inner pocket and went to the town to visit a certain fisherman who had befriended the Virginian when he first arrived in China. The old man examined the embroidered bandana closely and then told the lieutenant that it contained a message hidden in the embroidery, asking Charles to present himself at a certain side door of the mandarin's palace at a certain hour that night. Upon so presenting himself, Charles was introduced to Flower of Love, the enchanting young wife of the aged mandarin. Love you too, Jeannie. That's so sweet. Flower of Love had seen the handsome blonde officer through the enclosed balcony screen and had fallen for the man so exotic in looks, so much closer to her in age. Every night at the conclusion of his naval watch, Charles would knock on the secret door of the palace. and follow a servant through a perfumed garden to a small summer house where Flower of Love awaited him. Wonder if that was my Chinese name. I've never found out my real name yet. I wish it was Flower of Love. I like that. But I doubt it is. Probably nothing like that. What started as a daring adventure became a love affair that consumed the lieutenant's heart and mind. Charles went about his duties like a man in a dream. Nothing was real to him save Flower of Love and her night garden. His naval duties, once the center of his world, became a nuisance, a boring way to pass the time until the evening fell. Charles was almost mad with his longing for Flower of Love. He begged her to run away with him, to leave her aged husband and come to America. When she agreed, Charles booked passage for two on a merchant ship, prepared to flee China with the Mandarin's lovely wife. No, I haven't. On the appointed evening, Charles packed his kit and stole away from the naval warship. After he entered the Mandarin's palace through the secret door, he made his way through the night garden to the summer house. As he stepped inside, Charles was seized from behind and bound hand and foot. His captors thrust a gag into the lieutenant's mouth, carried him to the inner courtyard of the palace, and threw him down at the feet of the Mandarin and his assembled household. Everyone was there: wives, children, servants, and soldiers. Charles uttered not a word as he staggered to his feet, knowing that his fate was sealed. He squared his shoulders, determined to die like a man and an officer. A small smile fluttered briefly across the Mandarin's lips when Charles met his gaze squarely. He lifted his fan and snapped it open, the sound echoing around the silent courtyard like a gunshot. At this signal, a parade of servants marched through a narrow archway, leading Flower of Love between them. She was dressed like a bride in white and silver, with pearls and flowers in her black hair. Her exquisite perfume filled the air as she entered the courtyard with dignity and faced her Virginian lover with a smile of gentle pride. Something in her face and bearing warned the lieutenant that something terrible faced him, perhaps something even worse than death, though he could not fathom what that might be. Charles cried out through his gag when the servants seized the Mandarin's unfaithful wife and tore off her bridal array before the silent eyes of his entire household. The soldiers seized Charles as he struggled to free himself and spring to the defense of the woman he loved. The servants grabbed the defenseless woman roughly by her bare arms and thrust her into the face of her American lover in the mockery of a kiss. Flower of Love was pressed so close to Charles that he could feel her warmth, smell her perfume, and see the love and resignation in her lovely dark eyes. Too soon, the servants pulled her away and stood her just out of arm's reach of her lover, facing her husband. The Mandarin stepped down from his throne and bowed to the American naval officer. Then he removed the silver dagger from the lieutenant's belt and saluted him with it in the American style. Turning swiftly toward Flower of Love, the Mandarin raised the dagger. Charles screamed in horror against his gag. With one mighty thrust, the Mandarin cleaved his wife in two from head to toe, disemboweling her before the eyes of her American lover as her blood spurted out over his uniform. Charles stood transfixed with horror as the Mandarin cut out her heart and threw her body at her lover's feet. With a second bow, the Mandarin thrust the blood-stained silver knife back into Charles's belt and had the lieutenant dragged through the night garden and flung through the secret door where the love affair had first begun. When Charles regained consciousness, he was aboard his naval vessel, bless you, which was already many leagues out to sea on its way home to Virginia. Charles left the service when he reached Virginia, and he never spoke of his time in the Orient except once in private to his older brother. But he kept the silver dagger and the embroidered bandana in remembrance of Flower of Love. When his parents arranged a betrothal between Charles and a lovely Virginian heiress, he made no protest. Nothing mattered to him anymore. His world, his heart, was buried somewhere in China. 6 weeks before the wedding, grandfather continued, Charles, myself, and Charles's heiress were riding along this ravine by the light of the full moon. She was a blonde beauty and a bit of a coquette. Wishing to prove her power over her swain, she pointed to this pine tree, leaning so precariously over the deep ravine, and said, "Climb this tree, Charles. I dare you." And Charles did. Good night, Bezos. I sat up abruptly, staring wide-eyed at my grandfather. "You mean the ghost of the falling man is my Uncle Charles?" Grandfather nodded sadly. "I was there that night when Charles climbed the tree. I saw the look on his face as he desperately stepped on the rotten branch at the top. If you listen closely, you can hear his ghost calling his lover's name, Flower of Love, as he falls." Elaine wept softly into Charlie's shoulder as he stroked her hair. I handed her the embroidered bandana, and she smiled at me through her tears. "I thought your Charles should have a happy ending to his story," grandfather said to my sister. He patted Elaine awkwardly on the shoulder and walked stiffly down the ravine path toward the house. I kissed her on the cheek and followed him, leaving the lovers alone in the light of a full moon. I know, Davida. Mr. Miyagi. Okay, we have time for maybe one or two, depending on how long they are. Chapter 10, Dead Man's Curve. I grew up hearing the stories about the phantom of Dead Man's Curve. All the kids told it at scout camp and at sleepover parties. According to the legend, a teenage boy picked up a girl who was walking beside the road near Dead Man's Curve. She was shivering with cold, so he gave her his jacket and then drove her home. It wasn't until he'd seen her to the door and driven away that he realized she still had his jacket. The next day, he went to the house and rang the doorbell. An old woman answered the door and looked oh, we heard this one before. I'm going to read it anyway in case somebody missed it. Yes, the ghost left them alone. Oh, Tracy's the one that called you the judge. That's right. I have to remind Carolyn about that. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, we're going to read it anyway. They're cheating. This is one was in one of the other books, I think, or something similar. It wasn't until he'd seen. Oh, wait. An old woman answered the door, looked startled and then sad when the teenager asked after the girl. That was my daughter who died in a car accident 20 years ago, the old woman told him. Her ghost tries to come home on the anniversary of her death. She's buried in the churchyard next door. The old woman took the boy to the churchyard and pointed to a worn grave marker standing near the fence. Draped over the tombstone was the teenager's jacket. It's just an urban legend, my friend, Bobby said at our lunch table a few weeks before our high school graduation. The Phantom Hitchhiker is the most commonly told ghost story in America. It also happens to be a true story, his girlfriend Jessica said hotly. It's that ghost that causes all those crashes at Dead Man's Curve. When folks see her beside the road, they swerve to avoid her and smash into the brick wall. Sometimes their cars flip over the wall and roll down the mountain. That's what happened to Samantha and her boyfriend last year. Everyone says so. Silence fell over the table, and everyone glanced at me. Hi, Mary. I swallowed hard and stared at my milk carton. Samantha's family lived next door to me, and I'd had a crush on her ever since I started noticing girls back in the 6th grade. I'd been green with jealousy when Samantha started going out with a senior from another high school. She was a beautiful blonde girl with dark-lashed gray eyes and a sweet smile for everyone she met. Everyone loved Samantha. A few days before her death, Samantha had been voted junior class president. Her death was a shock to the whole community. The police thought her boyfriend had been drunk that night and caused the crash, but there wasn't enough left of either of them after the car fire to know for sure. The bell rang, and everyone hurried to their next class. I dragged along behind, telling myself that grown men didn't cry. I shook my head, trying to clear it, but everywhere I looked that afternoon, I saw something that reminded me of Samantha. By the time the final bell rang, my mood was as black as the roiling thunderclouds overhead. I was supposed to meet my girlfriend at the library to study for final exams, but I called to tell her I wasn't feeling well and was driving straight home, which was a lie. I wanted to drive up to the roadside memorial the senior class had put up near Dead Man's Curve in memory of Samantha, and I wanted to go alone. The wind whipped against my black sports car as I drove up the mountain. Lightning crackled across the sky, and the whole world had a greenish tinge, so I turned on my headlights as I rounded the last bend and pulled off into a gravel parking area beside the small memorial grotto. The grotto was filled with the statues of the Holy Family around a white cross that was nearly buried under flowers. Samantha's friends and my family made sure there was always something decorating her memorial. I shut off the engine and stepped out into the wind with a bunch of flowers in my hand. I placed them at the foot of the white cross and cried a little as the ozone grew thick around me. Lightning flashed, and I felt the electricity in the air as thunder cracked a few moments later. When raindrops started to fall, I ran hastily back to my car and flipped on the headlights. Time to go. As the heavens opened above me and rain poured down in sheets, I turned the car around and started to drive carefully out of the parking area. I nearly ran down a white figure that was standing at the edge of the road. I blinked my eyes in amazement, recognizing Samantha. I'd know that face anywhere. Samantha was alive and well, not to mention soaking wet and waving for me to stop the car. I skidded to a halt. Samantha, I shouted as she pulled open the passenger door and jumped into the car. You're alive, I said hoarsely, tears pouring down my face. Samantha's face was white as a sheet, and rain dripped from her clothes and honey blonde hair. Take me home. I want to go home, Samantha said in a strained voice. Ooh, it gives me the creeps. Yeah, it is a good one though, right? Of course, I said, responding immediately to the urgency in her tone. I put on my right blinker, preparing to drive down the hill toward my house. Samantha grabbed my arm with an ice cold hand and said, Not that way. We have to go through Dead Man's Curve. I need to make it past the curve. Oh, that's sad. A shiver ran through my body at her words, and I glanced over at the girl seated beside me. In the dim twilight of the storm, her body glowed faintly and seemed to ripple under my glance. I turned my gaze back to the road, the blood running cold in my veins. Samantha wasn't alive after all. She was a ghost. Why do we need to drive through Dead Man's Curve? I asked carefully, turning off my blinker and sitting very quietly in the driver's seat. An odd little bubble of time seemed to surround the two of us. I have to make it through Dead Man's Curve, Samantha repeated, her eyes glowing with white hot tears. I must make it through. I think we should go home the regular way, Sam, I said, turning the wheel to the right. No, the ghost screamed in fury. No. She pointed to the left, body pulsing with rage. Terrified, I turned left and headed slowly toward Dead Man's Curve in the pouring rain. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, but the storm held no terror for me now. All my attention was on the pulsing, translucent figure in the car with me. The electric energy inside the car made my hair stand on end, and I was so cold my body shivered continuously. Drive faster, the ghost of Samantha commanded. You are going too slow. We must make it through Dead Man's Curve. I could see the curve about 100 feet ahead of me, the low brick wall guarding the edge of a cliff on the left. I will not drive faster in this rain, Samantha. It isn't safe, I said, my voice high-pitched with fear. Why won't you listen to me, Charlie? Samantha shouted. You're drunk. You should let me drive. Give me the wheel. Charlie was the name of the boyfriend who had been driving the car in which they had been killed. A chill ran down my spine. I'm not Charlie. I'm your next door neighbor, Johnny, I said as calmly as I could. Ugh. Ugh. Suddenly, translucent hands gripped the wheel beside mine, fighting me for control of the car. Let go, I screamed, trying to wrench the wheel away from the determined ghost. Samantha, let go of the wheel. My words came out as white puffs of steam in the frigid air. Wind whipped the inside of the car as it swerved drunkenly left, right, left, as the ghost and I fought over the wheel. You will not kill me again, Charlie, the phantom woman screamed in my ear. Never again. The car slammed to the right so fast that I almost tilted out of my seat. We almost went into the woods to the right of the road. Let go, I roared, jerking the wheel violently to the left, my hand passing through the white translucent arms and torso of the ghost. The transparent flesh iced through my body as if I'd swallowed a cold smoothie too fast. My teeth started tingling, The car lurched to the left as we reached Dead Man's Curve. My headlights picked up a red brick wall, coming up too fast, far too close to my car. No, the Phantom and I screamed together. With a thundering crash, the screech of tearing metal, and the sound of shattering glass, the car hit the brick wall to the left of the curve. My head slammed against the back of the seat as the engine burst right through the dashboard, driven backward by the unmoving wall, and the airbag exploded into my face. White-hot pain roared through my body in a blinding flash, and the world went black. Hi, little lady. Hi, farm wife. I don't know if I said hi. See, we've read some that are like this, but never this one, you know. Days later, I came groggily awake inside a hospital room with my body encased in a cast, one leg extended upward in traction, and more tubes and bags around me than one man should encounter in a lifetime. Brightly clad nurses in cheerful uniforms were busy around me, and a doctor in a mask was checking my IV. Element. Oh, good, I'm alive, I thought wearily. Then the pain hit me, and I wished I wasn't. All at once, a translucent white figure appeared directly above my bed. Her long golden hair floated around her as if she was suspended in water, and her white dress glowed from within. You killed me again, Charlie, the ghost howled, her lovely face twisted in fury. She reached straight down through cast. She reached straight down through cast and chest with her clawed fingers, grabbed my heart and squeezed. Oh my goodness. Not good. Yeah, that didn't have a happy ending. Did it? Okay, guys, see you at Carolyn's. It's 3 minutes. 3 minutes till. Bye, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much.